Hello, and welcome back to The Sim. In this one, we're here in lovely Las Vegas at McCarran Airport with the Kodiak. So in this one, we're going to be looking at the new Bravo setup that we've already covered some of the basics of. Now, we're going to go in and we're going to apply a complete profile makeover to our Bravo for the Kodiak. This is going to include the working title G1000 NXi, as well as all the new Enunciator features and functionality that we can access and put everything into the SWS Kodiak. So let's go ahead, jump inside, and get started. Here we are inside of the Kodiak, and you can see that we've got the G1000 NXi installed through the marketplace. And we actually did something from a previous video where we're still replacing the standby indicator with kind of the Asobo default standby, just because the Asobo standby helps get us some of those FPS back. So if you're looking to do that, check out another video we did on it. So when we head over to Spad.next and have a look inside of Spad, of course, we come into the home screen, and the Bravo, as always, is found under our controls. Now, previously, I would have shown you how to set up all of your device configs. So we would have gone to Settings, Global. And now we no longer do that because, as we showed you, there's now two sections and the buttons and switches have been defaulted. Now, of course, you can always head over to Settings, go under your devices, and then under joysticks, we'll see if we want to go back to being able to use the generic method, and then we can control all the buttons ourselves. We can switch back to the alternate method. Note, if you do that, you lose access to all of the enunciators. So now that we know where that is, we're going to head back over, and we're going to look at our throttle quadrant, and we're going to review what all we've done. So button 9, that would be these reversers all showed up as buttons 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now apparently this can be different if they are the Airbus handles, but currently for Boeing, that's what those would be. Since we're set up as GA, we're not going to use those at all today. 22 and 23 is the Bravo trim wheel. And so 22 is roll forward or nose down, and 23 is the nose up. And you'll notice this goes back to using the elevator trim position, which is in radians. I use 0.005 radians as the increment and decrement. And for the Kodiak, I set a max and a min with no rollover because the Kodiak does have a max, but this value would just keep on spinning. So we need to make sure to set our maxes and our mins for those. If you want more wheel spinach, increase this value. If you want less spinach, decrease this value. 24 is the AXI, or what I've relabeled Throttle 1 D10. Now this may be labeled different for you. So I came into change label and I changed my label from the default to Throttle 1 D10. Note, if you change labels but don't assign anything to those buttons or to those, just the buttons, you're not going to see the name stay. And I'm pretty sure the same thing happens for axes that don't have something assigned to them. So just keep a note that this could be labeled different for you until you change the label. Now, because this is the Throttle D10, this is how we get ourselves into reverse. I use since it's a button, when the button is depressed, it is going to send the throttle decrease event, parameter 5, and then it's going to delay for about 200 milliseconds, send it again, delay, send it again, delay, send it again. That's just so that doesn't just jump straight from 0 to -25, which is full reverse thrust. It gives that simulation like it takes, you know, a second to get from 0 to full thrust. Yeah, and when you switch off that button, so when that button switches off, it is going to send the throttle 1 cut, which is going to get you back to idle. So button 25, this is currently labeled as engine 1 detent, because normally this is labeled as engine 1, though I've relabeled it engine 2, or throttle 2 in this case. But what you'll notice is since I don't have anything assigned to that button, that's the default. And pretty sure if I was to change this label, it will not stay. So really, that's throttle 2 axis, which we don't have a throttle 2 in the Kodiak. 26 is going to be prop 1 detent, which I did change that label. It works the exact same way as what we have done for our throttle. There I was using 100 milliseconds. You can change those values to anything you like, but that will send enough of the prop pitch decrements that it will feather the prop for you. 27 would be the next axis detent. 28 is our mixture 1 detent, or the 5th axis. And you can see I relabeled them throttle 1, throttle 2, prop 1, prop 2, mixture 1, mixture 2. Now, what's key about how the Kodiak is set up for the condition lever, it will work with the mixture lever, but they mapped a full range from 0 all the way up to the top. So what we did was we looked at what the value was when the mixture is just over the gate in the low idle. So mixture 0 will set the condition lever into the detent mixture cutoff position. So we've gone ahead and put that as what happens when you set it to on. So this will pull it down. When you take it out of this position, we want to send the set mixture to 164, which is the low idle position. So this is perfect. Controls that condition lever just the way we like it. Now, 29, which is actually the auto throttle toga button. So weird enough, but button 29 now jumps back over to this guy's go around button, which ironically is also linked to this axis second position. So these two actually share a button together. When we come back to button 30, this is your toga button as well. That's also shared by a couple of other of the axes towards the middle. Button 33, and this was where I said it was a little weird, in that they slid these ones in between the other detents, which they didn't line up. But this is the axis number 6, or in this case, mixture 2, but we don't have mixture 2. Normally, this might be labeled flaps. I relabeled the axis 6 detent. We will see if that resets or not for other people. Button 48 would be the 4th, or what would be mixture 1 if you had a 4 throttle toga button on that side. So think the Airbus handles. All right, so that covers what we've got set up for the buttons that all come around the lower part of the quadrant. Now, when we look at our axes, you'll see that the first axis we've set as throttle 1. We use the standard throttle without reverser because the full range from the bottom of the detent works perfectly. So that's going to be idle thrust of 0, full thrust of 1023. And again, we just moved it up, hit set, moved it down, hit set, and then clicked OK and made sure to enable engine 1. Pretty straightforward. And again, because this doesn't have axis below the detent, it's a button, we use that button for reverse thrust. Throttle number 2. Now this is still set up. I left it. I'm not using it. I got the caps put on, but I left it from a previous setup of setting all 4 engines. We got our propeller pitch. Works the same way. Uses the standard axis, engine 1, and then same thing, 0 to 1023. Mixture 1, now this is the one where we went and we did a custom axis configuration. So to do that, when you add an event, you, instead of a standard axis, you use a custom axis. And so what we did with this custom axis is we set a range definition of no. We're not redefining the range. All we're going to do is we're going to rescale from just above the detent all the way up, so the full range of 0 to 1023. But we're going to start from 164 and go to 16383, which is the full range of that axis from 0 to 16383 for doing mixture set. So here we're using the mixture set, not the axis. And that's why it says 0 to 16383. So we're using the parameter of mixture set. And we're using axis value, but the raw rescaled value. So both of those are set on. That's set to yes. And we clicked OK. We left mixture 2. It's not going to affect us, but it is there. All right. So now let's go ahead and move on over to the Bravo switches. So on the one labeled Bravo switches, we're now going to find everything to do with the upper portion of the quadrant. Now, these are the default names, Bravo TQ, Bravo switches. This is very much like the TCQ series with the add-ons. All of these items will publish as a single device. So in the Bravo, it's still a single device that publishes. So for our Bravo, this is set up the way we previously set up a lot of things. Meaning here now buttons 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, they all show up as a knob. And so if you see the name as we move the knob, heading, course, VS, altitude. But you still have the ability to attach events to each position if you like. Now, when we come over to the rotary encoder on the far side, you are able to set up your events. And here, all of our events had been previously set up using some conditional logic. And it was looking at those button events. So if we added tuner clockwise, tuner counterclockwise, and then you can give it a condition of the mode switch. So that's why you won't see anything on the switch itself, but you'll still see everything from mine. Coming across the top, we've got our standard NXi setup. This works perfectly with the NXi. So you had the send autopilot heading hold with the short press, and I was using the send PFD heading sync with a long press. So if I wanted to sync up the heading bug, this was sending the AS1000 command. So it's actually pressing the PFD sync, but it worked perfectly. Now, of course, we've gone and added the intelligence. Autopilot heading lock equal to 0, and it will turn off the LED. Heading lock equal to 1, it will turn on the LED. So again, we can get our modes toggling on and off. Nav, we are doing nav 1 hold, and we've got our nav locks. Approach mode, we're setting approach mode hold, and we've got our approach on and off for the LED. At the reverse button, I've replaced this with the VNav event. I showed you before how to do this. This is again the same Bravo setup for these buttons, pulled in so it all just works. So for our AP panel hold, so autopilot altitude hold mode and altitude lock set for those. We've got our VS holds, and then we've got our flight level change, and again checks flight level change for the LEDs. Coming over to the Autopilot, Autopilot Master, and again, we now have Autopilot Master 0 and 1 for the Autopilot LED to light up. Since we have no gear here on the Kodiak, we've gone ahead and we've set the gear selector to control the parking brake. And of course, because parking brakes, we're sending it as an event, we actually are going to check the position with a condition. If it's 0, then you can send it. Otherwise, don't do anything. Same thing with when we put it down. If it doesn't equal a 1, don't send it. The LEDs, I left with the default gear LEDs. I haven't come up with any plan for those, so they just do what they do. Starting with the switches, I use the first switch. This will do anti-ice gradual. So this is a way to turn on the bypass or the inertial separator, and so that will make the inertial separator work. Cabin lights. So turn on the cabin lights. This one's going to turn on the glare shield light. This is going to turn on the panel lights. This is going to turn on the fuel switch pump, which also, when that one is turned on, you'll notice we've got our aux fuel pump turning on. We turn on that inertial separator, our anti-ice comes on. We went ahead and we put the turbine ignition switch here, and we've got the SWS engine starter switch here, so you can go ahead and use these to be able to start the plane, and away you go. Over on the flaps, we got our flaps up, we got our flaps down, and we've got our decrement. So if I press it for less than 1 second, it's going to put the flaps down by a value, or sorry, bring them up by a value, so decrease them. If I hold it for a second, it's going to trigger sending them all the way to the up position. Same thing when pushing down. Press it once, it will increase it, hold it for a second, and it will send flaps full down. Annunciators. When you're doing your annunciators, remember, you have to tell it an event for on, and you have to tell it an event for off. Now, here for master warning, I use the generic master warning active LVAR and 0. So when that happens, it's going to set the plate to off. Then for turning the light on, we're using generic master warning. When the master warning goes on, we will then get the Bravo switch turning this on permanent, so solid light. You could have it slow flash, you could have it fast flash, you could have it have faster flash, you could have it just flash once. But there are these modes, so you could have it blinking at you, or you can have it set to permanent. It's whatever you like or prefer. Master caution works the exact same. Copy, paste, change the condition, works every time. Engine fire 1, again, same thing. Make sure it's off. Vacuum. So for the vacuum, I did it a little bit different. If it's less than 3, it turns it on. If it is 3, so greater than or equal to 3 inches, and condition, it's less than 8, go ahead and keep it off. And then again, when it is 8 or greater, go ahead and turn it back on, so it's overpressure. Now again, this is a Kodiak. I don't even know that we care about vacuum. Low oil pressure, so we've set a less than greater than for the on and off. If these values, you want to change them, go right ahead. Hydraulic pressure, same thing. There is a less than greater than for turning it on and off. Aux fuel pump, so if the fuel pump is on, light it up. So again, as we saw earlier, if I light that up, it goes ahead, turns on. I know my fuel pump's on. I can go ahead and put it back to the off position. Fuel pressure, same thing. There's a range. If it exceeds that range, you can go ahead and set it up. Anti-ice, so I set this up to follow the engine anti-ice for engine 1. Effectively, this will tell us if our inertial separator is on. So when we turn the inertial separator on, so it's in bypass mode, so we lose a little bit of power, but it opens up the bypass door and lets ice fly out. Well, we still see that light is turned on. Turn it off. Parking brakes, also very helpful. Turn off the parking brake, goes off. Turn on the parking brake, it goes on. Starter engaged. Yeah, if the starter is engaged, that starter light is going to be on. Low volts, we set this up to be less than 24 volts. It will give us a warning. So that's the voltage of the battery. So electrical battery voltage. That's basically where you get the yellow warning on the gauge is below that voltage. We left the APU at the APU. There is no APU, and I haven't come up with something else to replace this with. And then, of course, if a door is open, canopy, doesn't matter if it's the front doors, back doors, if something is open, that light will go on. So like we were talking about, what's really neat about this is, as you can see, it is going to control the range of it. And this is important because it's not really just a high and a low position. When you're looking at your NG, in the low, it drops down to 55. And as you move it up, it raises where it holds the NG to. So this condition lever is going to control what the engine FADEC is effectively going to allow the NG level to be. So with our condition level all the way to high, we're up at around 71%. So that means the spool up of the engine as we're applying throttle does not take as long from idle. So basically this is controlling what our idle NG is going to be set to. So yeah, that allows you more control than it literally being a low or a high. You have a little bit more range. And then like we said, this here is going to, when we look at our condition lever, and we'll move through all the way, you'll see when we drop this into the detent, it moves down. When we take it out, it pops it up. And then of course we've got our throttle. And like we said, when we push it into the down, it takes that little bit extra and just makes it a little bit smoother. Same thing with our prop, all the way down, fully feathered prop, and it goes back up. So we've got our parking brake, we've got that inertial separator, and you could see your CAS message is going to change. Yeah, and of course, all of those LED lights, so we can go ahead and put in our autopilot modes. And even if our autopilot master is on, and you see the trim start going. And then with our trim increments, as you can see, this felt like a smoother feeling with 0.005. So we can go ahead and trim the plane out just fine. The altitude is still there, so just like before, we got our altitude control, so that's fully covered. If we were in VS and we wanted a higher VS value, you could see the VS value fully controlled. Heading, we want to control our heading bug. You see the heading bug's off, but like we said before, if we hold down the heading button, boom, syncs our heading bug for us. Well, as you can see, we seem to be holding up a southwest plane that is looking to cross over runway 26 right. Well, guys, as always, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Don't forget, please go ahead, hit that like button. Smash down the subscribe if you haven't yet subscribed. And as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.